like more people. Thank you for remembering to do that. More people are eligible. More people are eligible for. More people are eligible for pardons and expungements. I think that are aware of it, and much more quickly than they are aware of it. The other thing, I was just talking to somebody last night that their only real means of this kind of relief is a pardon. And they're not really going to be eligible for a pardon for their last most severe thing until 2029. But that doesn't mean that they should wait until 2029 to get started, because some of their stuff is expungible, and there's things that they can be working on now, and should get started on. And we'll talk about some of that stuff today between John and I. So again, I'm Gina Evans, and I'm on the board with the Minnesota Second Chance Coalition. I serve on the Legislative Affairs Committee as well as the Development Committee. And I'm going to just introduce John briefly. This is Professor Geffen. He's with the Mitchell Hamlin School of Law, and he's going to do a lot of the expungement stuff. I'm going to start with pardons, and then we'll move into expungements, just because that's how I did the slides. And that he can introduce himself more thoroughly at that point. So. Okay. Oh, that's going to be problematic. Oh my God. So the stuff that we're going to cover, I think on both things is, and for sure on pardons, is overview, eligibility requirements, timelines, the materials that you need to hand in, and then for pardons, keys to success, and then some of the resources that are out there to help. You're not in this alone. There are lots of people out there that want to help and make sure that you have the right information, and sometimes even support. So the Board of Pardons, who's on that board is the Governor, the Attorney General of Minnesota, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Who those people are right now, elections in November could change that. But who it is right now is Attorney General Ellison, Governor Walz, and Chief Justice Gilday. Chief Justice Gilday has been there for quite a while, but Attorney General Ellison and Governor Walz have only been there for, I think, 4 years, and they're coming up soon. So, and then the Secretary of the Board, the DOC is who kind of oversees that. They do that, look at the applications. The information about it is on the DOC's website, and then them and their staff receive all the applications. They put packets together for those three individuals to look at, and they're there for the meetings and all that. And so we're going to send out this PowerPoint to everybody, and I just want you all to know I went through and linked everything. And so if you click on these links, it's going to bring you right to the Board of Pardons website. And then I linked all of the statutes all the way through everything to make it as user-friendly as possible for everybody. And everyone's going to get this website, use it. I got permission from the governor's office. Part of their PowerPoint presentation on pardons is in here as well. And there's a bunch of links to their stuff also. So what are the differences between a pardon absolute, a commutation, and a pardon extraordinaire? Pardon absolute or a conditional pardon are only granted to people that are actually still serving their sentence. And so whether that's in custody or on probation or parole, they're only eligible, people are only eligible if they're still serving their sentence. And so that sort of relief sets aside or nullifies the conviction, and it takes a unanimous vote. And so just so you guys know, and then I'm just gonna hop over to pardon extraordinary. Those are granted to those who have completed their sentence. Also has the effect of nullifying or setting aside the conviction. And then recipients are not required to disclose conviction except in judicial proceedings or if they're trying to be a law enforcement officer. And the unanimous vote is also required for that as well. And then, can you get that down off the screen? And then just a note on pardons. The thing about a pardon is that it still comes up. Like on your BCA, if you pull your BCA or whatever, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension report. Great question. It denotes that you had a pardon when it was, and so it doesn't do the same thing as like sealing a record like an expungement does. And it's only for certain people that it comes up. Like if you pull my record right now, like an average Joe off the street, it's completely clear. When I first got my pardon, there was one misdemeanor charge for like driving after suspension that still showed up on there, which I was glad of because it made me know that it got done. I was like, yes, because it used to be, I had my Bureau of Criminal Apprehension report before I did this stuff. It was 37 pages long. And every time I got a job, I had to do all that. It came up, I had to do all the background study stuff and all of that. And so I was very grateful that that one thing came up.
Do you know who all has access to those reports?
So you're supposed to be able to like sign for it or whatever, but like I all the time, like when I have people come and ask me, can you help me with this? And then like my friend Dennis the other day asked me, like I was like, I want to help you. Like it's been 10 years, let's do this. I was like, do you care if I pull your stuff? And he was like, absolutely. All you need is somebody's first and last name and their birthday. And you can pull, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you where those websites are. And if you're going to do a pardon, and I would guess for expungements, you want to make sure you have all the information as well. So I didn't do an expungement with an attorney. I did it through the Attorney General's website, and that's pretty easy. So, or they made it pretty easy for me. So the commutation is a little different. That is for folks that are in custody or serving their sentence outside, and it's a substitution of a lesser or different type of sentence, shorter duration, supervised release rather than prison, and it does not set aside or nullify the conviction. Oh, look at, I forgot to delete that. Forget this part right there. I didn't delete that. And it also takes a unanimous vote from the board. And so my friend Marlon just got a commutation the other day. He was sentenced to a drug conviction, and they gave him 100 and something months. And then the drug laws changed, and so he was able to get out on conditional release. And so we went back in front of the board and asked for them to give him, well, less time, but they ended up giving him the commutation, and he'll get off supervised release in September instead of 2026 or 2027 or whatever. And so, and a lot of people that are inside, we see, well, I don't know, there was probably a handful of them, maybe 6 or 10 this last go around with pardons that ask for commutations. And it's generally people that are inside the facilities asking for their sentences to be changed in some way. And so those are kind of the differences between commutation, the 3 different kinds of relief. Anything to add to that, John?
No.
Okay.
It's just that maybe that they're hard. The pardons and the commutations are hard.
Harder than the pardon extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Yep. So this is the information that I was talking about from the governor's office. So there's really been a push. My friend Mark Osler, who works at the University of St. Thomas, he does commutations. No, clemency is what they call it on a federal level. And he has been doing them for a long time. Our pardon board is very different than other states. The fact that it's, you have to have a unanimous vote, the fact that starting in 2010, they only got about They only heard about 60 applications a year, which is crazy. So they really started to do a push. The governor's office did kind of a campaign and tried to get out and educate people. Us in the reform community really has been trying to like get people to apply, do stuff like this, help people understand when are you eligible, and so we've been doing a little bit of this work. And in 2021, there were 151 applications heard, which is a pretty big jump. So in 2010, 14.7 applications were granted. That was the average anyways. And then in 2021, 41 applications were granted. So it's a pretty big change in relief. So it's working. It's still not enough though, 41 applications when there's so many people out there that are eligible for them. And like I've heard Representative Ray Dean talk about it. And back when he got a pardon, like they used to give them away to tons more people with tons more kinds of crimes back in, I think he got his in the 70s or whatever. So, so in 2010, 39% of pardon extraordinary applications were granted. And in 2021, 71% of them were granted. So we're heading in the right direction at least. So eligibility requirements for all three of them, it must concern an actual criminal conviction. So what that means, petty misdemeanors and juvenile delinquency adjudications are not considered crimes. And so like driving stuff, that's why my driving thing was still on there. Driving stuff and charges can't have been dismissed. And they can't have been resolved through a stay of adjudication, a diversion program, or a deferral of prosecution. And those things all are the things that are eligible for expungement, correct?
Possibly, yes.
So, and then it has to have been in Minnesota, not in a federal court or a foreign country. And then you can't have been previously denied a pardon or commutation, although there is a way that you can do that. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the pardon absolute or commutation. This is the thing I don't feel like a lot of people know, is that there's no statutory waiting period for that. And you have to still be serving the sentence for that crime. And so I think the governor's office would really like to see more people apply for the pardon absolute, people on probation. A lot more people inside have started applying for those. We've seen a lot of aiding and abetting cases recently. Well, a lot more. I don't know if I would say a lot, but a lot more. So pardon extraordinary, the applicant must have completed their sentence, including the probation or parole. And then you have to have been past the waiting periods, and I'll talk about those. The crimes of violence, and that includes I'm gonna try to do this. I might not be able to click on these. We'll see what happens here. Oh yeah, it's coming up somewhere. So I'm gonna send that, we're gonna send that out to everybody that came. It's coming up like on the screen behind, and I don't want to mess with it. So, so crimes of violence, in Minnesota, all drug crimes are considered a crime of violence. It's the most ridiculous thing. We started working on it last year. Representative O'Neill, or Representative Mueller and I really want to work on a bill that will make it so maybe only 5 years for drug crimes. It's all wound up in the gun laws, and so we can't. It's not an easy fix. I guess I'll just say that it's not an easy fix. And so drug crimes are considered crimes of violence, and that's anything that's considered a crime of violence that's in that subdivision. It's 10 years from release from supervision, which is the other thing that's a little bit of a problem, is that it's not from the date of the crime. it's from release from supervision. And so for a lot of people, and Second Chance Coalition was involved in the Minnesota sentencing guidelines, the Minnesota sentencing guidelines, yep. Doing the 5-year cap on probation, which really helped out with this a little bit, because there were people that were getting 20, 30, 40 years of probation. And if you can't even ask for this until you've been on probation 10 years, nobody can do it, right? And so the 5-year probation cap is really going to help with some of this collateral consequences, post-collateral consequence relief. Yes, we can call it that. And then other crimes, anything that's not considered a crime of violence, theft, check forgery, there's a big list of stuff, is 5 years from supervision. And so so you think about that, you know, anything that's not a crime of violence or a drug crime is only a 5-year waiting period. And so it makes a lot more people eligible, I think, quicker than people think that they are. And then the waiting periods, my friend Amber got a waiver of a waiting period by a few years because she was fostering her grandchildren. And if something unforeseen would have happened, she wouldn't have been able to adopt those kids. And so they very, very rarely waive those waiting periods, but they do. They do. So, and then applications for rehearing, if you get denied a commutation or a pardon, you have to ask to be heard again, and there has to be new information. They don't just let you apply and apply. There has to be like another piece of information different than the information that you gave them the last time. And you have to apply to reapply. So then you're talking about a year, right? You apply for the spring hearing and give them new information that you're going to give them at the next hearing, and they say, yes, we'll let you have a rehearing. And then you have to put in the application for the next one. So it's a timely, lengthy process. But you can reapply again. It's not like a once and done kind of thing. And some people think that it is. So, and then only 2 board members have to say yes for you to reapply. And so it's not a unanimous decision, it's a majority decision, which I think makes it a little bit easier to at least be heard again. So, oh no. Did I do that right? So the timelines, so the applications are due in December for the June meeting, and the applications are due in June for the December meeting. That's the way that it works. The DOC background, they do a screening, they do a thorough background check. They get in touch with the judges, the prosecutors, if there's victims in your crime, and see their thoughts on it. That's the thing that gets Chief Justice Gilday hung up a lot, is if the prosecutors are okay with it or not. You're in good shape if the prosecutor remains neutral, and then if they are opposed, that it gets really dicey. And so yeah, it gets tough. And if you can, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the procedures that they have hearings on are pardons, commutations, and pardon extraordinaries. They look at the paperwork for waivers and rehearings and just make decisions on them. And then you need a unanimous vote for pardons, commutations, pardon extraordinaries, and waiting hearing waivers. And then you need a majority of 2 votes just for the rehearings. So this is all in the PowerPoint that we'll send out to you. I screened it. I'm so glad I did too, because I was gonna go to the link, but all of these applications are in there and they're all different. And they asked for different information. The application for rehearing just asks what the additional information that you have is. And so, but here's an example of kind of what it looks like. They ask for a lot of information, They want you to pull your background check from the BCA, also from MNCIS, which is like the courts, it's pa.mn.courts.gov. They want to know when you were released from supervision. And it's really interesting to me because the policy, like the statute, doesn't say all that stuff. That's like rulemaking that they did that is a little shady if you ask me, but I'm not going to get into all that today. And so, but you need a lot of information to be able to do this. And there's a couple websites that you can pull it from that I will share with you. But you got to be thorough, you guys. All of this stuff, you got to be thorough. If you don't take it seriously, they're not going to take you seriously. And so, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get there. But this is what the applications look like. How I did mine is I turned it into a PDF, and then I think it already is a PDF, and it's fillable now. If I remember correctly, it wasn't when I did it. I turned it into a PDF and then went back in, and that's my privilege that I was able to do that. So I think they're fillable now though, where you can just go in and type into it. So and so I'm not going to go through all the applications because I want to. And so here are some keys to success for the application. Start early is so much more work than you think it is. Be thorough, they will be. Include all misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors. And because they can and will pardon them all. Like I've seen them do it on the fly in the courtroom. Like something else will come up and they'll be like, can we just add that right now? Like, let's get rid of it all in like super compelling cases. I've also seen them be super big jerks and not pardon somebody for parking tickets. And so be thorough, be super honest and transparent. Read and follow all the instructions, especially the conviction instructions. Chief Justice Gilday is I'm gonna say shark. She just like her job on that bench is to represent the judicial branch and public safety. And she like, there's this risk. I feel like she feels like she's taking like she's gambling on someone. And she needs to make sure that if they do this, that person's never going to make another mistake again. And so like she looks at, do they obey traffic laws? Do they, and right or wrong, like I'm not here to decide whether what she does is right or wrong, like that's her perspective. And so if you don't disclose something, like she like almost takes that offense to it like it's a lie. And so make sure, here are the websites, here's traffic, here's courts, here's BCA, pull all that. Make sure if you know you got into some trouble in Mexico in 1997, follow up on it, figure it out. Did you get charged? Like, because they're gonna know. They're gonna, like, you're not hiding nothing. They're gonna do a full background study, a net study 2.0. They're gonna find out about it. And so not that it's gonna get in your way, but you need to disclose it. So that's the other convictions. If there's federal stuff out of state, if you're not sure whether to put it on there anyways. It's not gonna stop you from being able to get a pardon, but you not disclosing it will. Like,
hey, Gina.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have a question from the chat that came in.
Sure.
that I just shot over to you.
You can read it.
Oh, sure. When will crimes of violence be able to apply within 5 years of probation ending instead of 10 years? This is going back a couple steps in your presentation.
Yep. So that would take a law change and a change in probably regime with our who's in charge of our government right now. Like I don't see that happening anytime soon. And you know, me just being who I am, we don't see a ton of crimes of violence get pardoned. Like some, Like if it's, domestic, if it's, and the ones that do, it's, they're really well done applications and for really good reasons. And so I'm gonna talk about that with, the keys to success for like hearing days and stuff. But she's really tough, and so is he. Keith Ellison's pretty tough when it's violent crimes. And so, but I don't see that changing to any, less than 10 years.
Okay, great.
We have someone else just ask about vehicular homicide.
Yep, so vehicular, I don't know that it's a no on vehicular homicide. But again, it's gonna be the 10-year waiting period, and what you're doing now to prepare for that application when you're 10 years from release from supervision is done, is really important. And I'll talk about that in a couple slides. So any other questions?
Yeah, we have one more. It said, how long after being discharged can you do the time waiver app?
You can do it anytime, but you really want to have your ducks in a row. And so, I would say, if you're talking about that, it's a 10-year time waiver, or it's a 10-year, it's a drugs or a crime of violence, I wouldn't do it any less than 5 years, because you're just gonna, you can, I'm not telling you what to do. And again, I probably should have done this at the beginning. I am not an attorney, and I am not here to give you legal advice. And I would probably say that a couple more times during this. I lived experience, I've done this, I've helped other people do it, but I am not an attorney, and I am not here to give you legal advice. And so, but if it was me, I wouldn't do it before 5 years. I've sat through probably 20 of these hearings, and Justice Gilday is kind of the stickler of the bunch, and I just don't see her doing it before that 5-year mark of you being tested and tried and so.
And then we have one other question. They asked what letters of recommendation.
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to talk about that. So, and then if you get another conviction, between when you turn your application in and when your date for hearing is, mail it in. The guy that, what's his name? It's not Ben. So there's a guy that will email you that is this, he's in charge. He's like the secretary of stuff. Once they get your application, he will email you. If you get a speeding ticket, if you get a parking ticket, if you get anything in between that 6 months, you need to email him and notify him. And it doesn't mean you're not going to get your pardon, but you need to be transparent about stuff. It's super important. And then a couple of other little important things is when they ask you to describe your offense in the application, take accountability briefly. You need to speak what happened, not dance around it. I got into an altercation with my girlfriend. I assaulted her. It was a horrible thing that I did. And it impacted her. Her child was there. It traumatized that family. You have to give voice to it, because I've seen her call people out 10 times. You didn't even say what you did. She said that a bunch of times in those hearings. I didn't even hear you say the thing that you did, and that's troubling to me. And so talk about who your victim was, how they were impacted. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I just called out a crime and who the victims were in the space of 30 seconds. You don't have to, and the fact that you're comfortable with it speaks to something, right? You can say the thing that it was. For me, it was I committed, and I had 13 crimes, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it, right? I was living a season in my life. I was in the midst of my drug addiction, and I had a lot of victims. I committed a lot of check forgery and identity theft, and I can't believe that was, I look back on that time in my life and it was like a book I read, or a movie I saw. Like, my heart is grieved by the person that I once was. But the good news is that Gina is dead. Like, she doesn't exist anymore. And here are the things that I'm doing now, right? I feel like I have to make up for that person that I once was, and this is me now, right? And so but you gotta call out the things that you did. And like, I even talked about, like, you know, even at Christmas time, and it's a little less now, I mean, it's been 19 years, but like, when I did that then, like, at Christmas time, and like, I still think about, like, Christmases I ruined, and like, it really damages people's credit. And like, I watched my mom have to go through it and like go to the banks and do all that work. Like, I think about that, the damage that I've done to people, and I talked about that in my hearing. And then quickly move on to like what you've done now to improve yourself, and what you've done to improve yourself, what you are doing now, and why a pardon would improve life for you and your family. And expect questions. She will ask questions. They all will, but her especially. She asked me, I got into a high-speed chase with the police, and a guy almost T-boned me, and that was the one question she asked me. Tell me about the high-speed chase, and tell me about the accident that you almost caused. And I just burst into tears. It was horrible, but she wants to know. Like, she wants to make sure you understand. So, and then do not blame others or ask for excuses. Usually by the time somebody starts talking, within the first 3 minutes, I can tell if they're going to get it or not, just by whether they take accountability, whether they blame other people, whether they, there's a bit of a formula to how people respond to their behavior, and so, and you know, it's okay to talk about your addiction and the way that you grew up, but not to, like, we're grown-ups, right? So, so those are a few things. So character letters, you only get 6. This is a new thing that they put on there. I think I probably turned in 10. Plus I turned in my whole background study, my whole set-aside process with it. They don't let you do that now. You get 6. For every application, you can only turn in 6. And so make them count. Give your give your people something to work with. Like, you don't just call, like, I get people that ask me all the time, will you write me a character reference letter? And I don't mind doing it, but like, give me something to work with. Like, when did you get out of treatment? What other stuff have you been doing? Are you volunteering somewhere? Like, give me a little, like, I know that you volunteer with me at Second Chance Coalition, but I don't, you know, I only have like one slice of your life. And so help me out, to be able to help me help you. People are really busy. And so these are some of the things that can be really great. And then why is that pardon really important to you? And so it really will help. I think people get frustrated when they ask for character letters, because people sometimes don't get back to them quickly. And if we can help people help us, it's awesome. So, and then letterhead matters. A place you volunteer, your probation officer, somebody in law enforcement that you're working with, people in the reform community that you're doing work with, your boss, your pastor, rabbi, or imam. Those are the kind of things that matter. Our girlfriends or wives or husbands love us. That board knows that. Your mom, I'm sure she's gonna write a smashing letter for you. Like, that's not a good letter. And so, or your girlfriend that you just met 3 weeks ago, like, letterhead matters. And so be thinking about that when you're getting, I mean, if those are the letters you have and that's what you can get, that's great. You get 6 letters, send in 6 letters. But these are the ones that I think are really important if you can get them. And then if then you only have 4, then one from your, ex-wife that you have a baby with, and yeah.
My question is, do they automatically get letters from the probation officer, or do you have to like?
So they're gonna get they're gonna get some responses back from the county attorney's office. They're gonna make sure that it's okay with the judge that sentenced you. They're gonna get some responses back, but not like, I mean, you can't get a pardon when you're currently on probation. But they're gonna gather.
Just like expungement, I thought this was about expungement.
Yep, John's gonna go next. Yep, John's gonna go next.
Yeah, but does that work for expungement?
The character letters?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that a little bit more. I mean, I have some ideas on letterhead matters, dates matter, and signatures matter. An email, I send an email when I don't really care. I send a text when I really, really, really don't care. But when I'm doing something serious, I put it on letterhead, I type it, I sign it, I date it. So if you can get those types of letters, that's what you want. And you want people that won't historically lie for you. If my brother asks me to lie for him, I will lie. I love him. But I'm not lying for one of my students. I'm not lying for a client. So getting that data to the court shows that they don't need to just hear your voice. Other people in the community support you. And I would say a lot of times we have cases where there's a domestic or there was some incident, and the victim in that case supports the case, supports the expungement. Get that person on board. Get that person on board. Pardon me?
The victim, you said?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
If you can get the victim on board, I mean, if you're prohibited from contacting the victim, do not contact the victim.
Yeah.
But if you have children with the victim, if you're married to the victim, if that's your mom, brother, sister, I mean, family stuff happens. And they're on board, fully protected. That helps. Huge. And I wouldn't wait for the county attorney to contact the victim. If that's someone you have a relationship with and it's not prohibited to talk to that person, reach out.
We've got a question in the chat about volunteer work. Does chairing recovery meetings and sponsoring others count as volunteer work?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Take a really broad view of rehabilitation too. You know, sometimes you ask a client, hey, what's your rehabilitation? And, you know, they're thinking about certificates. It's what are you doing with your life? Well, I went back to school. I pursued my passion in this. You know, I got really back into church. I mean, rehabilitation takes many different forms. I just really focus on being a great mom, dad, uncle, and I go to all these meetings. I go to all this. That's all signs of rehabilitation. The greatest sign of rehabilitation is the passage of time. It's the only thing we don't control in our rehabilitation, but more time without crime means you're proving yourself. So part of rehabilitation is an extended period of crime-free activity.
Yeah.
That's something you sell.
Yeah.
Because it's important. It shows. It's not just what you're talking about, it's what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's this bright line in the sand, you know, like right now the date is from release from supervision, right? And so that date is like this bright line you guys that we're drawn in the sand that like what are you doing from that time on? But you don't have to wait from that time that you're off supervision. You guys can start building that case right now for expungement, for pardon, and that like where are you volunteering right now? Where are you spending your time? Are you in school? What are you doing to better yourself? Are you in therapy? Like, you know, treatment is one thing, but like, what are you doing in addition to that? So like continue to like personal development, right? It's about personal development and yeah.
I know when I take people to go in front of the commissioner, they don't care, they do care about the time and the crime free, but they care more about, and I shouldn't say more, but the part that they talk about more is what are you doing in your spare time? And it's not just work. It's like, if I work and I work and I work. No, what are you doing on a Saturday?
Yeah.
You don't have anything else to do. How do I know that you're not going to be looking for some enjoyment and that enjoyment is going to come in the form of leading up to a crime? So they want to know even what you do in your free time and your peaceful time. What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy? Where do you find enjoyment? Because if you're not finding enjoyment in your life, you're probably going to search somewhere else for it. So where are you finding enjoyment in positive living? Is something that that people that I work with have been asked a lot. And that's the one they're most unprepared for, is where are you finding peace and joy in your life that you're contributing positively to the community. So it's not the absence of mistakes and bad choices, it's the presence of like being really active in good choices, but the good choices that also bring enjoyment and peace and happiness and fulfillment.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I've got a question for you, Gina, that is probably near and dear to your heart because it's about DHS background checks. If someone has a permanent disqualification from DHS that keeps them from working with any state agencies, will a pardon help them work again?
So the simple answer is yes. The more difficult to stomach answer is that the stuff on the permanent list is going to be a lot harder to get a pardon for. So I hate being the bearer of bad news. It's not completely impossible. There are some things on the permanent list, for instance, secondary assault, that I think depending on the story, could be a possibility. But the stuff that's on that permanent list is the kind of stuff that the pardon board is usually a no for.
Yep, I said the DHS work is near and dear to Gina's heart because she's on a task force looking on these issues too.
Yep, John is the chair of that task force and I serve as the co-chair, so.
And there is another question about notifying the pardon board when you have a conviction. Would you want to notify them when you are charged for something, or do you want to wait for the conviction?
They're gonna see it, I think, no matter what.
I'd over disclose
Yep.
with the board.
Yep.
If they feel like you're hiding something, they won't look at the merits of your case. When in doubt, disclose.
Yep, transparency is everything with them. Yeah, you don't want them thinking that you're dishonest because they are taking a chance on you. That's the thing. Like, they give you a pardon, they give someone a pardon, and then that person goes out and does something unthinkable like that. It's a gamble that they're taking on you. They're wiping your past crimes free with the expectation that you're done doing like illegal things. And so you really just do want to be honest, because like she's a shark. I don't know what else to say. So
I'm not saying that.
So I the other convictions that are in the permanent list, they're way too long to list. I can, when John is presenting, I will cut and paste the
I'll put
link.
the link in the chat, the link to the
Yeah.
statute.
Yeah, 245.
Yep, it's a long list.
It is. And then here, success for the day of the hearing. This is from my friend Mark Osler. He actually does training every 6 months, the day before the pardon hearings, to help people prep for like what they're gonna say. And so keep your remarks brief. I speak for a living. This is what I do, trainings. I spoke at the Teen Challenge Gala in front of 1,700 people. Like, I'm very comfortable speaking, and I was a nervous wreck the day. I cried almost the whole time I talked. And so, I wrote down what I was gonna say. Mickey, who is, she was Tom Roy's secretary, gave me this advice. She said, I've been doing this a really long time, and what I've noticed is that the people that write down and read their speeches have a tendency to get approved more often than people that wing it. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage you, even if you're comfortable speaking, to write down and read what you're saying to the board. And so I just listened to her, and I've given that same information and same advice to the people that I help do this. And so take responsibility for your crime. Don't argue. Talk about the way that I kind of have given you all this information already. The thing about witnesses, a good witness would be the victim of your crime, if they're willing. And then somebody who can testify to firsthand experience about the changes that you've made. I brought my husband with, who is a pastor and the chaplain at the Ramsey County Jail. And then I also brought Mark Hazy, who was with Second Chance Coalition, and the board knew him. And so, but pastors, employers, again, not your mom. A less helpful witness, someone who you've met recently or with whom you are in a romantic relationship. So I didn't do well on that one, but good thing. And then dress professionally. Wear something conservative, maybe that you would wear to court or to church, or to something like you want to be respectful to them. Like they're a respectful bunch of people and they will be well dressed. So, so resources. Ooh. So I'm almost done. So for pardon resources, here's one right there. John helps with them. They're great. Mitchell Hamlin, their reentry clinic is fabulous. I always get this screwed up. Clemency cases, which is federal. Professor Osler is fantastic. I was waiting to hear back from the University of Minnesota. They do a little bit of work there, especially around cases that involve child protection stuff. And then Minnesota Second Chance Coalition, this link right here is a 15-minute video that we did that has all this information that I just gave in a little bit less detail. And the link to that is right there. And so any other questions before I turn it over to John to talk about expungements?
So the difference is you can be on, pardons is you can be on, what is it?
Parole
Or probation. Like, what if people already? So expungement is when.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So
basically?
the biggest difference is that a pardon or a pardon extraordinary, there's a way more crimes that you can be expunged for, or that you can be pardoned for.
It makes you available to work.
Yep, it gets you they can't look at them then. If you're looking at housing, if you're looking like it's kind of removed from BCA's record, and so like when you look up my record now after my pardon, nothing comes up. Like if a person's looking it up for me to rent a house or for me to get a job, like my background studies for work come back in a week, and before it would take 6 months for it to come back. And so John's going to talk about it right now, but there are only 50 felony crimes that are even eligible for expungement. And so expungement is so limited. What is eligible for expungement? So limited.
And we can talk about, if you're, to some degree, who cares? You're just trying to find a way to move on with your life. And I think we can talk about like when you go down each road.
No.
Because I think there is a clear line. One's faster, and I can talk a little bit about which makes the most sense. Because again, who cares? It's just getting to the right end for you.
I've got another question from the chat about the logistics of hearings with the pardon board. Do they only do the hearings in the metro area? Do they do hearings in other parts of the state? And are they in person or virtual?
They are only in person now, and they are only at the Capitol. They make them as difficult as possible. During COVID, it was fabulous. They were online, and people from all over the state came, and I am a little sad that they made them back in person at the Capitol. I feel like it limits who's able to go, and but nope, they're in person, and they're in the Senate office building, and it's super intimidating, and everybody that's waiting to do the hearing is sitting behind you, watching you while you go. There's reporters in the room. All of the staff is there. It's horrible.
But it's really great, but it's super great. Assuming you should do it.
You absolutely should do it, but know that it's, yeah, it's less than great. So I'm gonna leave it right there, and then you can either hit the space bar or,
Okay.
oops, I did it again.
I've got another question about pardons. This is actually mine. Do you think that the pardon board is looking to pardon people, or are they looking for reasons not to pardon people?
Whom on the pardon board are you talking about?
Pretty much like the board in general, because expungements can be a different story, because they can be a little different story depending on what judge you're in front of. But what do you think about the pardon board? Should you really be stressing your reasons for a pardon and be ready to answer the questions about why you shouldn't get one?
So, the governor wants to pardon folks. He's all for it. Like, they put a big campaign together and did this whole thing, and like Mark Osler is working with them. Like, they are interested in pardoning more individuals. I think Keith Ellison is also interested in pardoning specific kinds of crimes on the pardon board. And then Chief Justice Gilday, because she is like, her people convicted those folks, and her job is public safety, and so she is more interested in upholding the law. And so, like, I think 2/3 of the pardon board is looking to pardon folks, and then and so there's a little bit of conflict of interest almost because of the way that it's set up, because it's unanimous. It has to be a unanimous decision. And so we took it all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court. We've tried to, I actually wrote somebody else helped me write it, but I wrote a amicus brief on the case that went to the Supreme Court. We lost, about the fact that it shouldn't be unanimous. It's a governor's pardon board, and it should be a majority to decide about who gets them and who doesn't get them, because it's hard to, it's really hard to get a pardon. You look at that, 151 people turned in applications, and was it 70?
Oh,
I just showed the thing. I just can't remember. I think it was 70 people got pardon extraordinaries. So, I mean, that we just need more people to apply. More people are eligible. More people need to apply. So.
agreed.
I was gonna say one thing about when you were like, it was horrible. The experience of going up in front of any judicial boards like that is not pleasant. It is stressful and
Intimidating.
They're not kind. They're very businesslike, and it is not kind. I do stress to people to set up something for self-care afterwards. Debrief with somebody, planning on going to have like something either good to eat or watching a movie, like whatever de-stresses you, but do something self-care afterwards to help calm down, because that stress period does peak pretty high for the experiences that I've had.
And I think it's an interesting scenario because they tell you right then that you won or lost, which is pretty unique. A lot of expungement cases, they'll say, we'll take it under advisement. And so watching somebody crash and burn and then just walk away,
Yep.
I mean.
And they debate it right in front of you.
That's a hard thing to watch. And I think the self-care, 100%. Well, let's move into expungements. My name is John Geffen. I'm an attorney, and I'm the director of the reentry clinic at Mitchell Hamlin Law School. What we do is we take students that are studying the law and we connect them with people, real cases, so they can get some experience and people can get some services. And the idea is we work with people who were formerly incarcerated, sometimes currently incarcerated, on civil legal issues, trying to help people not recidivate, but people to go pursue their dreams, to go move on with their life and do good things. Things that we think everybody should have the opportunity to do. And oftentimes collateral consequences interfere with those dreams and those abilities to do that volunteer work, be a part of the kid's life. And that's pretty hard on, I think, individuals emotionally too. I mean, it kind of says you're not worthy. You're still we still don't trust you. Well, we need to move past that. And the goal of our clinic is to help people move past it. An expungement is a totally different process than a pardon. This is a process that goes through our court system. And what it does is an expungement seals a record from public view. So let's say you had something 10 years ago, get an expungement, then a landlord looks you up, they don't see it. It's not like they see something that says, oh, this is sealed.
Right.
They just don't see it, right? So we talked about what a pardon is. A pardon is the government saying, you did great, and we're going to relieve you from having to admit that you ever did this, and we're forgiving you, pardoning you. But everybody still gets to see it. A little bit of an inconsistency, right? So it might help you later, but a true successful expungement seals that record. Nobody's going to see it. There are a couple situations where they might. For some reason, law enforcement still gets to see if you apply for a job. And the other is if you get charged again for a crime, they can reopen it to kind of see, hey, you know, is this going to be relevant for any kind of subsequent prosecution? But for the most part, an expungement really relieves an individual of those collateral consequences. Again, if you're successful. And the word expungement means to obliterate, to destroy, but really what we're talking about is sealing. But for the most part, I've done expungement law for about 20 years. When you're successful, people really get to move on with their lives. This is something that does help. Yes.
So you said the law enforcement, what about like working with federal like companies like government? Could they see that expungement?
So the way data works, and maybe if you tell me if I answer your question. The way data works in Minnesota is comes in police, right? Then you get it, let's say it gets prosecuted. It means records from the police department and the court system go to our hub of all records, which is the BCA. So every day there's data coming in for every government entity that deals with law enforcement to the BCA. So BCA has every county's information and every police precinct's information. And that data goes to the feds, to the FBI. If you get an expungement successfully, the court will order everybody to seal their records, including the BCA, and then the BCA will tell the FBI that this record's concealed, and the record's out of public view. Now, let's say some government jobs. We talked about the background study, that's DHS and Department of Health. Those are going to be jobs in healthcare, jobs where you're working in direct care positions. If you didn't get an expungement that included those agencies, they get to see it. But if you do it right and you have that order extended to them, they don't get to see it. So
Got a quick question. This kind of ties into the employer question. So can you talk about what situations an employer can see a record after it's been expunged?
After a successful expungement, the employer will not see the record.
So if they say BCA though, could they see it?
Just say that one more
If
time.
they say we're doing a BCA background, could we see it?
No.
They see it?
If you're successful, the court will order this big net, right? Hey, all you agencies that have that record, seal it. And if they don't, you get to sue them, right? You got some teeth there. Fair Credit Reporting Act, Data Practices Law, you got some teeth. So they'll do it. This isn't some fake order that everybody ignores. When you get it, you got it. So once BCA seals it, you're good. So a lot of times you go apply for a job, they make you do what? They make you sign something, right? They can look up your record. Then they take that to BCA and they get your record. If you're successful, it's going to come back as nothing. Nothing came up under this individual. Or like Gina and her bad driving, there's going to be some driving stuff. I'm going to have some driving stuff if you look me up. But
What about banking? Because like someone had like a clear record for all these jobs, but one day they applied for like banking or something and it showed up and it's supposed to be sealed after 18 or something.
so you're talking about some juvenile stuff, it sounds
Yes.
like. And remember, and Gina talked about this, juvenile cases are delinquency cases, right? That's not crime. But some juvenile data is public. But we have two different expungement statutes. So we have an adult expungement statute, we have a juvenile expungement statute. So when I was a kid, everyone was like, if you're gonna get in trouble before you're 18, because then it's all erased. Nah, it's not. And nothing's automatic. People would say to me, oh, I got in trouble, but they told me to be expunged after 6 months if I didn't get in trouble. No, it's not gonna be. It would get dismissed, but it's still there, right? So let's say, for example, I get arrested and I'm charged with assault, altercation with my wife. And then my wife comes and tells the prosecutor, it didn't really happen that way. And they dismiss those charges. I won, right? This isn't gonna harm me. There's still a record of that. That's a public record that landlords can use against you and employers can use against you.
And the DHS.
And DHS, I can get fired from my job for something I didn't do, and I have no recourse against my employer. I need to get ahead of that. I need to get it expunged so nobody sees that. People are nosy. People want to know everybody's business, and they want to use it against them, right? And when my kids start dating, I might be in that situation. And I'm nosy maybe, but these are real things. Getting ahead of them and using these tools that we have to make your life better. There was a really interesting article that was written on the University of Michigan, and they looked at people, and they have similar expungement laws to Michigan. They figured out two things. One of them was pretty dumb. One is people that get expungements do better. They either find more employment or better employment. Their lives get better. Other thing they found is poor communities of color aren't using expungement. They either don't know about it or they don't have
Or
the
they
money to
being
do it.
lied to by people in the government.
Government lies is probably part of it too. So there's just a lot there, and let's take these things that we have and use them. Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to backtrack a few seconds, before all the questions came over.
Yeah.
That when we go for an expungement, the court, they send out this net where everybody has to seal the record. But you did mention something that kind of threw me off. Do you have to ask them to do that?
Yes.
Certain for these various agencies, you have to ask them, seal it here, and there.
Yes.
Otherwise, they'll just say, okay, we'll seal it, but these people have to, so you have to ask them.
You make a really, really good point, and something I want to talk about is that if you don't ask for it, you can't get it. So one of the hardest parts of expungement is figuring out where the heck are all these records? Because if I'm gonna throw that net out there, I want to catch it all. I don't want to miss something. And truthfully, it's hard. And it's one of the things where people fail. They don't understand the difference between Minneapolis police and Hennepin County Sheriff. They didn't understand that Richfield police was involved in the case, or the Richfield city prosecutor was involved. They just thought it was a Hennepin County attorney. That is a huge flaw in the expungement process because that's hard. My students fail on this all the time. They struggle to find where this stuff happened and who served. Because if you miss them, as you identified, they don't expunge them, you miss something, which means you gotta go back. And I don't want to go back. I'll do it once.
Got a couple questions jumping in again. When someone has a case expunged, does that include the court transcripts that are now available on MICRO, the new MICRO webpage? And can you expunge juvenile cases after conviction as an adult?
So I guess John is gonna go through a whole bunch of information. And so if you guys would just let him get through the information and hold your questions.
Yeah, I think a couple questions, he's gonna hit the answers on these.
He's gonna cover all the information about like what and how long and the process. And so if you guys could just like write your questions down, we'll have time for questions at the end. Because he's got quite a bit of information to get through.
Thanks, Gia. And I'll stay here. We'll go through anything. I won't leave anybody hanging. Okay, so a couple things you need to know about expungement is it works It's slow. I tell people, hey, this is 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year. It just is slow. So what you don't want to wait is to lose that dream job. Come in, they said if I get this expunged, I get the job. It's just the process by statute is slow. There's no mechanism to speed it up. Everybody that goes through an expungement is experiencing a hardship. So saying this is causing me harm, everybody is experiencing that. Again, similar to the stuff that Gina went over on pardons, this does not include federal. There's not really a great federal expungement process. And whatever there is, I'm not an expert in, so I'm not going to talk about it. This is something I really want people to understand, and understanding where records are kept is almost half the battle. So remember we talked before about the BCA being that hub? The BCA has two databases. There's a public database and a private database. The public database is available online with your name and date of birth. But that's only going to include convictions, usually gross misdemeanor or higher, and it will only be available for 15 years from the date you're released from probation. Sometimes you look up a BCA report and go, I got nothing. There's nothing reported anymore. Great. It's not great, because when you sign your name on that application for that job to be a volunteer, they don't use the public one. They use your private one, because you just gave them access to it. You've agreed when you sign your name that they get to access the private. And the private database is every arrest. I don't care if you got arrested in 1972, but I have a case right now from 1972. Every arrest, charge, everything that was, anything, any interaction is going to be on that private database. That's what everybody needs to get, like $8. You need your private BCA database, because that's really what people are going to find out here. Sometimes you find, hey, this isn't me, and you can contest it. The rest of it, if it is you, you go, I got to clean this up. What can I get expunged? Because if I got a 38-page private BCA report, I don't, if the landlord picks this up, it's over. I don't care if it says it's over, right? That's on the no pile. So you need to know what they're looking at, and BCA is the place to go. You can look yourself up on MinSys. The private or the MinSys database you look at online from home is just convictions. So when you're asked, and this is true with pardons, to disclose everything, they don't want just your convictions. They want everything. And if you forget to give them everything, they can call you a liar. You're hiding it. People lose cases because they don't get their BCA private data. Get it? You should know what people are seeing. The good news is nobody can see it without your permission. It's your data, only be given with your permission.
John,
When
can
we
you?
go on this website, how do we order that private?
Yep, that's what I was just gonna ask. Can you send in an $8 check if people can't get down there?
Yes, you can.
Can you get online?
So you could go there?
You can go there and they'll give it to you while you wait.
Oh,
And just so everybody knows,
Right there.
they keep their data by fingerprint. They will fingerprint you. It's not that they're trying to arrest you. They're just trying to verify that the stuff that they're going to give you is connected to a fingerprint card. And it's a good thing, because let's say you get fingerprinted, somebody else.
That's happened in the past. That's why they implemented the fingerprint process, because there's been people who look identical, have the same names, and or just
Right.
same people names, like who are yours.
So go down there if you can. Their website has a form. If anybody needs it, I can send it. There's a form that just you're requesting it. The bummer about it is it needs to be notarized, because you have to show that you're really you, right? And even if you go to BCA, you have to have a state ID, because they just need to verify you are you. So it needs to be a notarized report and a check, or go down there.
Is the BCA one, the private one, the same as Net Study?
No. Net Study is, that's the Department of Human Services. So this gets terrible, but there is something I would call a background check. That's an employer, a landlord, and it's all public data. Net Study, used by Department of Human Services, can look at non-public information.
Okay.
And civil stuff.
Civil stuff, juvenile stuff that isn't even public. civil maltreatment findings. They get access.
Child protection.
They get access to other stuff.
But if I go down there, can they notarize it on site?
You don't need a notary then, because you got your ID.
There.
So get this, and if you pursue an expungement, it gives you 90% of what you need. If you work with an attorney, they're gonna say, oh my gosh. And then you're never gonna have an issue of failure to disclose, because it's all gonna be there. Yeah,
Pardon me once more, but
of course.
the VCA, they have child protection records? Is that what you can see? Or
No.
who were we just mentioning now that can see?
Net study is a process where if you want to work with vulnerable populations, children, adults, we have a heightened level of a background check.
Exactly, because these are vulnerable little people.
Right. So the government said, okay, if you're looking for one of those jobs, we're going to create this way to search to make sure that people pass a background study. So only in those situations. So in those situations, you would have to have applied for a job or volunteer position and agreed to this net study report. A net study report isn't public. So you would just get some information back from the Department of Human Services, or I guess Department of Health, saying, essentially you passed or you didn't. Okay.
And that's federal. They do nationwide study.
Yeah. We could have a different
A
meeting on
different
that.
training on that.
All right, let's talk about expungement. So, and this goes to your question. In my opinion, and I am a lawyer, so I get to give my opinion, I guess, is I would pursue an expungement if I could before I pursue a pardon, because I think it's faster. It's a great remedy because it seals it. And I think pardon's a great thing for people who can't avail themselves to the expungement laws. I think that's where you go. So my first thing is, if I look at a case, I go, can I expunge this? If I can, that's where I'm going. Because I think that gets me the fastest, quickest way to somebody getting their job, their dreams, and their apartment, or their dreams, or their home, or their dreams, or whatever. So, and the way the statute's set up is, it's sort of different for misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, and felonies. We have waiting periods. And the idea, I think, is we want to have a little bit of period of time where we make sure you're not reoffended.
So those years, that's what my question was how do we know what's your wait period? Who do we trust that information? Like if a lawyer telling you a wait for just like in public information and those are the wait periods?
This, under the law, this is the waiting period. For a misdemeanor conviction, 2 years from the date you complete your sentence. Add those 2 years. After those 2 years, you can apply for the expungement, right? Doesn't mean you win it. It means the court can give you the relief you're asking for. If you apply after 1 year, the court will say, the legislature has not given me the power to give you what you want. So the waiting periods are important. These are threshold. If you don't wait long enough, the court really, even if they believe everything you're saying, can't give you what you want. So that's why the waiting periods are so important. So 2 years misdemeanor, 4 years gross misdemeanor, and this is not all felonies are eligible, but for a felony, a 5 year. That's the floor. It's not the ceiling. The longer period you have, especially if there's no subsequent offenses, is great. Something that you have to remember too is, like, let's say you have a felony, or let's say you have a misdemeanor that's 10 years old. Hey, it's eligible. 6 months ago, I got a misdemeanor for theft. That puts the brakes on everything.
Oh, if you get a good conviction during the time we're trying to get expungement, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So if you're trying to expunge a misdemeanor, I'm going to look at the date you applied, and I'm going to look back 2 years. You've got to have 2 years clean. Yeah, I'm going to air quote with you. So yeah, clean. That's how they do that. Because if, like, it's not designed for, like, let's say you have a misdemeanor from 10 years ago, but you've had 9 other misdemeanors in the last 6 months. That ain't flying.
Is
Right.
there ever like in between numbers? Like, never mind.
No,
I'm staying with you
Because
after
like
we're chatting.
someone told me, like, what if someone said 3 years or something, and that's in between misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor conviction? Is that a such thing? Like your case could be in between both a gross misdemeanor and misdemeanor conviction, or it's just like.
You're gonna have to draw something for me after we're done here today, and I will sit and help
Yes,
you.
that's what I said. Someone
We'll
was
talk
here
about it in specifics, because it's hard. It's hard to do this like I had a felony here, a misdemeanor here, how long? The waiting periods are not as simple if you have multiple, but we can talk about it. So those are the waiting periods. Don't pursue it, in my opinion, until you meet the waiting
So
period.
everything is individual, it's not, you can just all together get something.
That's a great question. Let's say I got 5 cases in Hennepin County, and they're all 10 years old. I can file 1 petition for expungement and list all 5 cases. I'm gonna get 1 hearing, and we're gonna talk about 5 cases. Let's say I got 1 case in Anoka, 1 case in Dakota, 1 case in Ramsey, 1 case in,
One
I got-
state.
I got 4 or 5 different hearings. I gotta back each county that created that record and ask them to seal it.
And that's 5 filing fees.
5 filing fees or 5 requests to waive the filing fee. So if you're gonna make mistakes, just stay in the same county, right? Let's just
Can I-
show it.
I dropped the statute for the expungement statute in the chat, 609A.
Right, and 609A is the whole thing, and we're gonna have some links for the forms that the court has on how to fill this out and some resources later, but everything is in 609A. So what about felonies, right? Well, what's weird about the statute is it says there's a list of 50 felonies that are eligible for expungement. That sounds pretty good, right? 50, how many could there be?
Yeah.
It's a weird list of 50. And if it weren't so sad, it would be kind of fun. So on the list is assaulting a police horse. I've been an attorney for, I can't do the math, 27 years. Never had an assaulting a police horse case. Altering livestock certificate, evasion of fuel tax, rustling. What the hell is rustling? Livestock. This is a lot of weird stuff. Right? This is Bonanza. This would be great on Bonanza. But what's missing? Assaults, felony assaults. Nope.
Degrees, any degree of assault is excluded.
Well, if it's a felony,
Oh, felony, right.
yeah, if it's gonna rise to the felony level. Some of the larger felony thefts, nope. Burglary, nope. So if it's not on this list, you can't get it expunged in a meaningful way. I almost hate to even talk about it, but there is this thing called inherent authority expungement. Where the court, so when we're talking about here is this statute, the expungement statute. Legislature writes the law, governor signs it, that's the law. But the court said in about 1980, hey, we created these records. We can do whatever we want with them. And over the years, there's been some agreement that if you're not on that list of 50, the court can use its inherent authority to expunge it. But it can only expunge court records, which means it can't tell the BCA what to do with its record. We talked about that net, the net's this big.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if it's helpful. But if you're not on the list of 50, my recommendation is to get the pardon. Try for the pardon.
With these felony cases, if anyone was eligible, if they got this case, so basically they get charged and they eligible for it to get dropped and they got their DNA part of it, being charged for the felony case. Don't they take the DNA and stuff like that? Or something like they get your DNA, they have to have it on record, right?
This won't have anything to do with your DNA. It's not gonna mess with the DNA, but I think you pose a really, like, let's say you get charged with a felony and 2 misdemeanors, and they throw out the felony, and you take the plea to the 2 misdemeanors. Then your expungement is a misdemeanor expungement. The focus is on what you were convicted.
But the question is, could they clear your DNA in
No.
the system too?
I don't believe so. And you don't clear DNA and you don't clear, it doesn't change your firearm restriction. So if you had a felony.
So if they already got your fingerprint and all that, they can keep your fingerprints, keep everything in the
The
system.
fingerprint stuff would be sealed. And then now that we're talking about, I don't know if the DNA is sealed. I don't know what they do with the DNA.
Like how they can easily find you if your fingerprint is already in the system, so they take your stuff out the system, right?
It's sealed.
Expungement?
It's sealed. It's not going to be used anymore. For anybody to access it, they need a court order.
So if we could save the question till the
Sorry.
end, that would be really great.
That's on me. All right, so when the court looks at a case that it can expunge, the court's gonna look at 12 factors, and this is required by statute. And the things you want to think about: nature and severity of offense. Violent crimes are more severe, right? So they want to look at that, because if you're going to make a mistake again, it's different if you're committing a low-level theft or trespass than it is if you're committing assault. The risk the petitioner poses to the public is really what it's all about. Because if you get an expungement and make a mistake, and this has happened, newspaper article comes out. The newspaper article doesn't talk about you. Newspaper article talks about the judge that gave you the expungement. Judges run for office. The attorney general runs for office. These are things. Does anybody know who Willie Horton is?
Yes.
Okay, we're cool. So Willie Horton probably derailed a presidential campaign in 1984, where he was part of a furlough program from, in Massachusetts.
Was it Massachusetts, New Jersey?
Massachusetts, I think Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And when he committed a crime, came back to blame presidential, blame it on him.
Well, it was a horrendous crime.
Horrible. But Willie Horton committed the crime, not the governor. And so there's this scare, there's this fear that can come back to them. So that's why the risk of public safety. Length of time, we talked about this, the longer you go, better off you are. Rehabilitation. This is a tough one in my opinion. It always says mitigating factors. What was your level and participation? The tendency for people is to minimize, hang around with the wrong people. Man, I was the victim and I made this mistake. I'd be real careful with that, because it can get flipped that you're not taking responsibility. I'm really scared of that. Hardship. It's usually pretty easy, because there's criminal records really impact an individual's ability to live a life they want to live. So you want to identify it though, and be specific. This job on this date, not like it interferes with housing. Where did you apply? What did they say? What's your housing like now? Is it safe? Your complete criminal record, obviously one offense from 20 years ago, 16 offenses in the last 5 years. Employment and community involvement. You'll never know this, recommendations of law enforcement. But when we have a hearing, the prosecutor can, and oftentimes they object, say no, because A, B, C, and D. We're seeing really significant changes in that, where people are not objecting as much, increasing the rate of expungement in a lot of counties to very high numbers. When I started doing cases in '98, you'd hear judges and prosecutors say things like, well, then you shouldn't have done this if you didn't want to live with the consequences. I think with this understanding now that we don't want to perpetually punish people who make mistakes. People who are doing good things with their life, let's support them, help them. We're all better off. Restitution issues, if you owe money, even under fines, it's almost impossible to expunge it. How can they expunge it and seal it if they're still trying to collect money? So if you've got these issues, you got to pay. Got to get it paid off. Any other factors the court deems relevant, which is because that's true for every court case I've ever seen. I'm going to get to it in just a sec.
But did you say these 4 factors were what we needed before we start, or while we're doing it?
I would think about these as I'm writing everything I do, because what do I want to talk about? If I know that this is that the game is played with these 12 rules, I want to address all of them. And I want to do it beforehand. I believe that a petition for expungement is one with what you write, not with what you say. I think you can lose your expungement with what you say, but 90% of the time, it's what you submit in writing. Take it seriously, put the time in, make it say what you want to say. It's sometimes unfair, because then it kind of becomes this writing competition, and people that write well get expungements, but it's our reality that judges oftentimes are professional readers. They read these, they go in with a pretty, I'd say 90% of them might be decided before you go in. Yeah, you can't seek an expungement if you're on probation. It just doesn't work. Again, pay all restitution. The one thing that you're prohibited from expunging is a case where registration is required. If that's, it just, you know, we can talk about whether that's right or not, but it does not give the court the authority to do it. Court could agree with you. Doesn't have the authority. Doesn't impact firearm restrictions. And again, non-convictions are public information. Unlike the pardon process, you can expunge non-convictions. And they're very easy to expunge, quite honestly, if you do it right. Yeah, we talked about this. Nothing's expunged automatically. We're getting a little bit better on that, but
We're trying.
Yeah.
Clean slate, we're trying.
How about, do records just fall off? Do people's criminal records just fall off? I've gotten
No.
that question before.
No, I mean, so the two databases that they don't fall off is, so MinSys, it doesn't fall, it might fall off at 99 years, but there's no, it doesn't fall off.
Like that terminology fall off comes from DHS, and when you're applying for jobs and stuff, like felonies stop being detrimental to you at 15 years. Gross misdemeanors stop being detrimental to you at 10 years, and misdemeanors stop being detrimental to you at 7 years. So that's, I think, where that terminology falls off comes from.
And I think people have, I mean, I've heard people say the word dismissed a lot, and they say, oh, that case was dismissed. Some cases are dismissed without any kind of finding of guilt. Some cases, the dismissal is you're dismissed from your sentence. So it doesn't fall off your record when it's dismissed and it's done. It's still there. You just don't have any requirements to the court anymore. And so people talk about dismissals all the time, and we want to make sure we're using terminology that makes the most sense. And Gina, you have
I have so I left a bunch of slides
Okay.
that are double ups.
okay.
But do you want to talk about Keith Ellison's website? Do you want to go over the paperwork? Tell me what you want to do next. 'Cause I'm gonna get through these. I'll get through these slides quick.
Let's talk about the Attorney
the-
General's office. So we talked about an expungement process. Oh, there's the list of 50. You want
Yeah.
to do forms? So let's do forms.
Okay.
So the forms the court
You
has,
have them, right?
and I've got a big stack of them if anybody's interested.
Yeah, and then it goes into the Attorney General's website.
Those are expungement forms.
These are the forms
These are the forms.
the court has sort of created and sort of how to do it. And it's essentially, if you want to pursue without an attorney, here's how you do it. I don't love them. They're hard sometimes, but this is a great place to start. So getting some forms is great. The hard part about the forms is I don't know if they are there to answer a lot of questions for you, but it's a good place to start. There are, the other thing that's really, really exciting is the Attorney General's office has started to pursue sealing criminal records themselves. So what I've talked about today is this process where you petition the court, you go before the judge and you say, I'm eligible for expungement. There's this other process. When the law was rewritten in 2015, it created that prosecutors can ask for expungements themselves. And it's a much easier process. What we saw though for about the first 5 years is prosecutors weren't really doing it. So the Attorney General sort of created this idea that they're going to help some people expunge through this prosecutor-driven thing. So if you apply, if you go to the website, there are certain counties, 5 of them in particular, that want to work with you directly.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hennepin's up there, but they don't mean it.
I'm going to say there's 5 because the Attorney General is saying there's 5. But if you don't do well, then
I tried. They're not doing it.
so we got some counties that are saying they want to work with you directly. And then if you don't have, and this is not where you live, it's where the offense occurred.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on Ramsey County, you can ask them to seal your record. If they agree to do it, there's no filing fee. There's no court appearance. It's fast and it's free.
Yeah. The application's
fantastic.
super simple.
And they're doing a lot of work to get that done. Now, not everybody's going to be eligible, but sure is a nice place to kind of start. So if you don't have it, if it's not in that county, or if it's in a city, a lot of these won't do city cases. So like say, I'm not so sure about Ramsey County, but I know Hennepin County. They're not gonna do a Richfield case. That, they didn't prosecute that. They will only do their cases. So then if you don't fit one of these, you click the all other counties and cities, and then you're gonna be working with the Attorney General's office. You'll give them information, they determine that you're eligible. They will reach out to the prosecutor in your case. If the prosecutor agrees, they will draft an expungement order, try to get the judge to sign it.
Yep,
Free, easy, fantastic.
yep. And
Love it.
so, and here's one other thing, because of this thing that's happened, some of the other counties, like my girlfriend Amber reached out, she had a Wright County case, and she just reached out to the Wright County prosecutor's office and was like, hey, I have this case and it's holding me back, and there's the prosecutor-led expungement. What do you guys think about doing this? And it was for a 5th degree possession or whatever, and they did it. And so, and that was without all this. And
But
so,
You're saying we can go through this process without going through the lengthy 6-month expungement?
Yes.
oh, it took 18 months to do it.
I mean, that's one of the
It
problems.
was during COVID though. Yep, it was during COVID, so, but it took a long time to do mine.
And so I don't do prosecutor expungements because I end up spending so much time trying to get the deal together. Like, I'll just go the petition route. What wouldn't be a bad idea for some people would be to pursue this. If it works, great. If not, then pursue the petition route.
So the reason I did it this way is because I make too much money to qualify for the waiver. So, the filing fee to do it this way is $350. And I don't know what the income requirement is for to waive the $350 filing fee, but that was why I chose to do it this way, because 13 times $350, $350 was a lot of money.
Agreed.
And I'd just like to say also that with Mike Freeman stepping down from the Hennepin County Prosecutor's Office this November,
Yeah.
we'll probably gain a prosecutor that's more willing.
Yep, yep. I talked to Max Page about it, and he said they're not. He said, yeah.
The other thing I would say too is how much elections matter. I mean, Keith Ellison has pursued this. That does not mean the next Attorney General will approve this. So how important elections are, what's going on in Hennepin County, that progressive thoughts on this change significantly from our leadership and how much elections matter. This is a great thing. This was essentially what the legislature wanted to see happen. We didn't see it happen for a while. It's flawed, but it's a start.
Yeah.
Andrew said
we're
it's
so-
125% of the poverty level.
It's how much, 125? Okay.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, I knew I didn't qualify.
Yeah.
there's several, so the fee waiver, if you're under 125, you're good. You can also, there are other ways to prove hardship under that
And get a reduced fee.
and get a
Or have
reduced
it
fee, or
waived.
to get it
Yeah.
all waived. And if you are represented by a law firm that's based, providing services based on agency, can't say that word, and that's another one. So it's a little more than just 125. So if you look at the fee waiver form, there are several tiers, and 125 would be based on your family size. They do look at debt. For every case I do, I usually do a fee waiver. Our clients never really, even if they're a little bit over 125, they don't have $1,000 for filing fees.
Absolutely still apply. And there's sorry to jump in, there's a catch-all right at the end of the form where you can explain your reasons why you can't come up with 13 filing fees right now, or anything. It's very important to fill that out completely.
Just
But the
maybe
125 is the strict income guidelines by statute.
the one last thing I want to say that's different from a pardon is you can come back. There's no limit on an expungement how many times you go back. You don't have to wait. I think it's a good idea to wait a year, because oftentimes, like if Judge A said no 6 months ago, it's Judge B, who they have lunch with every day, gonna have to overturn what Judge A said. So I think a year is a good time. If I'm in a hearing and the judge says, I think it's too early, I will ask the judge, I encourage you to say, Judge, when would you like to see me back here? you know, why don't you come back in 2 years, and I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna write that down, I'm gonna put it on my calendar, I'm gonna be back in 2 years. So, even a no can tell you how to get to this, lots of positives. That's all I got, Gina, I mean, we can
Go
talk
one
for
more.
years about it.
Yep.
Was there more?
I feel like there's,
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, here's some,
there's
people to
John.
be in touch with. That is not me, that's an old guy, I don't know. You can reach out certainly to me. Our office does some expungement work. We might be able to find a student attorney to work with you. We also might be able to give you other resources that could help you. Volunteer Lawyers Network, fantastic organization, does work.
John did a great video for Second Chance that's on our website, that the link is right there. Yep, and if you go one more slide. Second Chance Saturdays are back on after they were not for a really long time, and they are now being hosted by the Volunteer Lawyers Network. They are does it say up there?
It used to be, second Saturday.
Second
Okay.
Saturday, 11:30 to 2:30. If you
And they're-
can, get there early.
Oh, there, second Saturday, there it
Yeah,
is.
come closer to 11:30 than 2, but it is kind of a walk-in situation.
So that's a really great question. I don't know.
We have access to our plan.
Absolutely. So I don't know for you guys, we have everybody's email address that's online or no? How do we have everyone's, how do we have everyone's contact information? Or do we want to just post it online?
Chat.
Yeah, we should.
But also, if you guys aren't aware, I had like over 20 people coming out of a government agency, and the link that you all sent for the, okay.
I saw. So what we're
A
gonna,
lot of people can access it. So I don't
yep,
know
so
if
the link that said, get on here now
it said
didn't work. You had to,
527, so it didn't work.
yep, you had to click on the register now and the link was in there, so it was kind of messy. And so we'll probably post this recording to the website and then put the PowerPoint up there as well. Like we'll put it under the resource page, as a resource. So sorry, all
I just
volunteer
drove
work.
up here, I'm like, look, I'm not missing.
Yeah, I had a lot of people asking me that question, was this recording gonna be available?
Yeah,
So
we will-
that's great.
We will put it up next to the other recordings, the expungement recording and the partner recording. We'll just post this recording and then, we'll just put the PowerPoint up there like, you don't mind, right? So.
The experience is different through whichever way you go from the previous slide.
Say that one more time.
On a previous slide, you had these resources like the lawyer network and, you know, you guys, which is faster, you think, like, I don't know, just curious of.
Depends on the day and who answers the phone. You know, there's some randomness to it. I don't know if there's.
Like a lawyer, is a lawyer gonna do everything for you?
If you want to pay a lawyer, you know, that
It
might
says
be,
volunteer.
right, that's not paying a lawyer. So Volunteer Lawyers Network they have a great program and they're trying to place expungements with people. You might be on a waiting list for a while. I don't know what their situation is right now. If they got 100, if they have 2.
I can speak to that a little bit because I volunteer with the Volunteer Lawyers Network. You do need to get in contact with them and do an intake either through their webpage, or if you go to Second Chance Saturday, they can do the intake there. And then the cases are put on a list to get placed with attorneys. And for some cases, there is a waiting list. And they try to, they work with the volunteer attorneys and try to get them hooked up with clients as soon as possible. But there could be a waiting period.
I would also say that, and we don't have this up, that if you're working on the pro se packet, there are self-help centers with the court system that can be really helpful if you're pursuing it yourself. As a formal legal aid attorney, I always encourage people if you're financially eligible, reach out to legal aid, they might be able to help. But there is a little bit of, you just gotta do some work and plug away at it. It's not as easy as it should.
Nope, the Attorney General thing was really easy, but I had to, and this is my privilege, like I have friends in Ramsey County was the first one, and I have some people over there that I've been working with for years, and I had to stay on top of them. I was like, I haven't heard anything. And they were like, you haven't heard anything? And I feel like I was one of the first people that got through that process in Ramsey County. And I had to, like, I called every couple months for a year and finally got the paperwork back that said like that they had finally done it. And then it was probably another 3 months, because what they do is they fit them in between court cases. And so like if they're waiting for them to bring somebody in or whatever, they'll throw a couple of them in front of the judge and whatever. And then it was a couple more months before I actually, so I got the petition in the mail, and then a couple months later I got the signed petition in the mail.
And that's when you check your ACA.
I have not. I'm gonna go down there. I'm leaving
Yeah,
to go out of town. I'm gonna go down there today after this and go look and see what's on there now. And so, but Hennepin County's been a stickler. So I'm actually very surprised that their name is up there, because I've gotten some different information from them.
We've had communications with them, and they've identified that they are eager to work on cases.
Okay.
Well, I can say, from my experience, a couple of years ago, more than a few years ago, I had a client that I helped her through the process. It happened relatively quickly. And she was, she prevailed, she was successful. And it was in Hennepin County. But it was like a petty theft.
Yes.
And it was like 8 years old, but it was still impacting her ability to find a place to live and find employment. And she was really going through it, right? And we laid all that out before the judge, and the judge didn't even let her finish before he just, it's like, you're good. So I think it just depends, a lot with Hennepin County and who the prosecutor was, at the time, like who actually prosecuted, because it was an assistant, and who the prosecutor was at the time that took your case. I think that has a lot to do with even getting it looked at. I think sometimes Hennepin County is just not friendly. It is not friendly.
But so I heard you can go to the county, ask to get in front of the judge yourself personally, by yourself, you don't need no one.
So if you're gonna pursue an expungement through the petition process, again, focus on the word process. You file it, you have it served, and then the court, and then you pick the hearing date.
So that is a petition.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really formal process. It's not like you show up and talk to the judge.
And I pulled this up.
Forget it.
Yep. So, and I pulled this up. So on this expungement forms, I'm gonna see if I can get this to work. So I pulled this up right here. This first expungement 101 on the thing, and like,
It's not showing.
yep. I'll see if I can get it to work. Hold on. Escape.
And the thing that's sad for me is that we have this process, and a lot of people can't navigate it without an attorney. So they don't get the expungement, because that formal process is formal. If you make a mistake, he fails it.
I want this.
So people who are eligible.
Yeah, that's the way they tell a lot of people, and that you can do it by yourself.
Well, you can do it by yourself, but you have to be so detailed. You have to pay attention to the details, and you have to understand that it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time, and it's just you. So if you're not well versed in self-advocacy, you might get intimidated and let it just fall apart. Like it is intimidating if you're doing it by yourself.
So this expungement 101 on the court records, like I don't know that is not what I meant to have happen. I don't know that I would do this myself personally, but it's a pretty detailed document that tells you like everything you have to do. Completely fill out the petition in order for each thing that needs to get expunged. You have to do the order of hearing, and like it gets into every little bit of detail. It says who you need to serve, how you need to serve them, all 6 agencies that need to get served. First, you need to make 6 copies of it, who it needs to go to, serve it through the US mail. Like this is a really detailed, really step-by-step thing on how to do it yourself. Oh, that's it.
That's.
Well, you can
Yeah.
serve it through the US mail, or you can also serve it in person.
Yep,
That's how we did it.
yeah.
If you are the party, you can't serve it. Do it by mail.
Okay, yeah, if you're not having anyone to assist you, yeah,
That's what, if it's my case, I can't. do
you
it.
can, yeah, but I.
What is serving like, it says these different people serve.
So
Yeah.
service.
Like you've been served,
you know,
like that, when
you
somebody
give
serves
them
somebody
petition.
divorce papers, you're serving somebody papers,
Yeah.
and you can't serve it to them, you have to have somebody else serve them the papers.
But in the
So
next
serving the
do it
court.
by mail.
Serving the court.
File
The
with
sheriff's
the
office,
court.
the prosecutor's office, yeah,
The court,
yeah, everybody,
Oh.
it's
You
just different agencies.
You're just notifying what you're doing.
Right.
You're saying, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I'm just sending you the paperwork that tells you what I'm doing. So if you don't like it,
So that paper goes to all those agencies.
Yep.
Oh,
And then you wait for a court date.
well, it depends on the county. In Hennepin County, you call and you get a court date and write it on your paperwork. So when you serve it and hand it out to everybody, they know if they want to appear, when you show up.
but it's doing it that way is the only process you have to serve people. The other ones you don't serve people.
Correct.
And I'll say, when I go through the process, it helps to even just have a second person look at the paperwork because it's overwhelming to look at it and go through it. So sometimes it helps to have a second or third person look at the paperwork with you and say, oh yeah, that's what that means. I'll read something that has to do with me and I'll just like, the words will like dance around the page, but somebody else will get it and then they'll help explain it to me. And then I'll actually, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. It took months. We had it spread out on the table and we had it layered and it took months to do it by ourselves. Even with a couple of people looking at it. And when we did go to the mail, we had the mail carrier put it on and I took a picture. So it like time stamped it, date stamped it. Like we had the mailing ID number on it. So every time we served the paper, I took a picture of it at the post office. So I had to print out the label, set it down, took a picture and then sent it.
So that's the other thing that John wanted to make sure that everyone understood. Somebody asked if a 5th degree possession is expunged, can a person own a firearm? Expungement does not change your restriction to own a firearm, only a pardon does.
Or
Wait, what? Any crimes like?
Any crime, an expungement does not change your restriction to own a firearm. You still don't have, if you get your crimes expunged, you still don't have the right to bear arms. Only a pardon does that.
but not all crimes take away your right to own a firearm.
Right.
So if you lost your firearm rights and you expunge it, it doesn't automatically reinstate those rights. There's a separate process, even separate from pardon, where you can ask the court to restore your firearm rights. But just so people, like sometimes someone comes in and then halfway through the expungement, they're like, can't wait to get this done so I can go hunting. Like, yeah, that ain't gonna work. Just so you know, there's a different process.
There's another question in here that I'm gonna just read it because I don't really understand it, but maybe you will. If a client has a non-conviction and probation for 2 years and was told after their 1 year waiting period, the record would be entered on the record as if it never happened, would this client still benefit from an expungement?
Yes, it sounds like that person had some type of diversion or some type of stadium adjudication, where at the end of it,
But the arrest is still on there.
the rest is on there. So what that looks like, if you look at, I don't know, where's it, pled guilty, or, it still looks like you did it. And at the end, it might say, case dismissed, but the landlord reads that as,
Yeah.
they don't care. So absolutely get that
So
expunged.
it doesn't matter if it says 152.18 or 152.22, it's still on there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, nobody reads the last page. They read the first page, and they read what the case was about. And it's hard sometimes because the case starts as a felony and is reduced to misdemeanor. Oftentimes employers and landlords go, oh, this is a felony case. Well, no, it started out that way, But yeah, that sounds like a really, really good expungement case. One someone should do.
Somebody's asking about transcripts again. You said the transcripts are removed as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, so anything connected to that file is sealed. So if there's a transcript of a hearing that's related to that file, it's sealed.
How long does it take before a hearing, if this is granted or denied? I'm guessing they mean.
So the statute says, once you file your paperwork and serve your paperwork, you can't get a hearing for at least 60 days. And that gives anybody who might want to object time to prepare. Then if you go to the hearing and you win, it doesn't go into effect for 60 days, because theoretically somebody could appeal it. And that's our appeal period. So what they don't want to do is expunge it, somebody appeals it, it gets overturned, has happened, then they got, doesn't work that way. So you have a 60-day waiting period before, 60-day waiting period after, which leads to this process taking so long, that's 6 months to a year. Because even when you move quickly, you have 2 6-month or 2 60-day waiting periods.
Somebody asked about the list of felony convictions. I actually put them and the links to them in the PowerPoint. We just didn't go through each individual one, and the ones that are a little more relevant and not cattle rustling, I highlighted in red. And so we'll get them sent out. I forgot that we don't have everybody that signed up. Do we have everybody's email addresses? Because they registered, right?
Yeah, you have to put in your.
Yeah, so we'll get them sent out. Otherwise, we'll put it on the resource page for the
Yeah,
website.
just to
on
be
the
sure, can everybody just enter their emails in the chat?
What about us here? Can we write it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
competency. So someone is incompetent to stand trial, and then they have a 5-year, and then at the end of the 5 years, nope, you're still incompetent, we dismissed it. What about that?
So there's a case that says if there's some incompetency issue, it's not a proceeding resolved in your favor. I think we really have to see how it ended up getting, because if it's dismissed and like they didn't pursue it or.
Right, in my line of work, I run into that quite a bit with the people that I work with. And my assumption was when it's finally dismissed because they're not cured of their
Yeah.
disability, we can not have to worry about that with employment. But
It's
now
still
after listening to all of this, I'm afraid that that's not true.
probably isn't true. I think that it's a really important issue that you'd almost have to look at it case by case to see how it really got resolved. Because I think there are some situations where it would be considered a proceeding resolved in favor, which would be expunged very easily. But there is this case that says, like let's say you committed, we know that an individual committed a murder, but they were found incompetent to stand trial. The court kind of said, well, that's not something we're going to expunge because you still pose a risk of harm, and
Right.
we want to protect the public. So I think probably it might end up being treated as a conviction, but it would be dependent on the case. I'd rather have it looked at a case by case, and I can be available for comments
Okay,
on that.
you have questions
Okay.
for you then?
Okay, I just think it's not an easy
Okay.
answer. Just like an attorney, right? No answer. Right? Anything else, Vice Chair Evans?
When should you like start the expungement process? She said there was a certain period where you start, don't do it, type like 5 years on certain cases. So what about you with expungements? Like when, during those waivers, like if it said 5 or 2 years or 4 years, when should you start the process of expungement?
So, in a perfect world, the day you pass that waiting period, you file. There's you literally can't do harm to yourself. The only thing that can happen is somebody says no.
So
And
don't do it during that week.
do not file. I think you should start preparing. I think you should start thinking, where am I going to get those letters of support? How am I going to answer this question? So when you're ready to go, you're just like, the day comes and boom, slap your stuff down, when you get it served and filed, then you get your hearing date. I don't want you to suffer any longer than you have to. Like, let's say they say, no, you are in the exact same spot that you were. Like, almost always they'll tell you when to come back, then you know. You've got your game plan for your future in place. This is when the dreams start again. I'm gonna do this stuff for a little bit if they get by, and then here's where I'm gonna go become, I don't know, whatever your dream is.
So I am just kind of running through these slides really slow. The ones in red are more common, I guess I would say. Things like false certification by a notary is not a real common felony conviction, I guess I would say. But they're on here. I'll be honest with you though, there's not a ton of them that are felonies that people actually get charged with. Like, and it's interesting, like, you know, computer theft is one of them. Computer damage is another one of them. Like, when I actually read through the list, it was pretty disappointing.
I'm confused. It said shotgun in public, so you can't just have a gun in public if you have your license?
Shotgun or rifle in public by a minor is what it actually is. So, yeah, we'll get them up, so.
All right.
Not that I'm uninterested, it's just have you reached the end of this mission or is there more?
Yeah, 'cause I feel
Yep,
like
nope, we're done.
people walk around with their firearms on them.
Did you get that, Gina? Will you say that again?
No, yeah, I'm just, not that I'm not, not that I'm not, you know what I mean? I was just wondering, have we reached the end of the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Or are we ready for our slides?
Nope, we're done.
It's just open discussion
Yep,
at this point?
yep. Yeah, we're done. Thank you guys for coming. John, there's another question on here.
The situation.
If a client was told they could apply for an.
Sure.
So that they.
There's that.
so they can-
Oh,
Here, read that question.
So which ones are in red, the ones that cannot?
No.
Are these the same resources? Or should we take
We can maybe open some revenue.
Have you ever heard of?
Yeah, you see a lot. So what I would do is, this is your part, report.
And is that gonna take a
List at the
legislation?
bottom.
We're gonna have to change statutes.
This is one on our but now, so they actually did, that's fun.
Do you have the
It was.
So right at the bottom.
It started.
Yeah. That was your fee. That's.
Stop the recording.
That's not what I was just. So you want to go to the bottom and see what they do. Because if they send stuff to you and it's out of the court system, because they're someone else's restriction, you're not worried about it. They just keep. Because that's a small, it's not just as simple as that.
Should we say anything? Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a good day.
First thing we'll do is.
I wasn't expecting it to go perfect. Where you
You were in the
Court information.
Oh,
You just
okay.
type in.
All right.
You just type in.
You still up there?
No.
Where you at now?
I mean,
That number
That's the
actually
link.
shows at the top.